The hall was already full long before the program was meant to begin. Sunlight poured in through tall windows on both sides of the room. It moved slowly across the polished wooden floor, forming long, warm lines that looked almost like paths leading toward the stage. Dust floated gently in the air, glowing in the light. The room smelled faintly of old wood and clean air, the kind of smell that stays in places where people have gathered for years. This hall had seen many performances before. Some were good, some were forgettable. Most were gone from memory the moment people stepped outside. Today felt no different to the crowd. Chairs were placed in neat rows close together. Adults filled them one by one, sitting shoulder to shoulder. Coats were folded carefully and placed on laps or hung over chairbacks. A few people whispered to each other, their voices low. Some checked their phones. Others glanced at the program, already thinking about what they would do afterward. No one expected anything special. It was meant to be simple. A short performance, a child at a piano, a polite round of applause, then everyone would go home. At the front of the hall stood a grand piano. Its black surface reflected the sunlight, like still water. The lid was open, showing the strings inside, silent and waiting. The bench was perfectly centered, untouched, as if it had been placed there long ago just for this moment, near the side of the stage. Area stood a young boy. He did not move much. He did not fidget. He simply stood and waited. He was small. Smaller than most people expected. His shoulders were narrow, and his arms looked thin inside his shirt. His clothes were neat but simple. His shoes were clean, though worn at the edges, the kind of shoes that had walked many quiet paths. His hair fell in soft curls around his face, not styled or fixed, it's just the way it always was. He watched the piano, not the crowd, not the rows of faces. Just the piano. This was not his first time seeing one. It was not even his first time playing in front of people. He had played before, in smaller rooms, quieter places. But this room felt different, bigger. The ceiling seemed higher than it needed to be. The space felt louder, even when no one spoke. Every sound echoed, longer than expected. Every movement felt noticed behind him. An adult bent down slightly and whispered something soft. It could have been a reminder. It could have been encouragement. It could have been both. The boy nodded once. He did not. His hands were calm. That surprised anyone who happened to notice. People expected shaking fingers, restless movement, signs of fear. But his hands rested quietly at his sides, still, patient. Across the room, near the front row, a man stood with his arms loosely crossed. He was one of the organizers. Someone who had been to many events like this. Someone who had seen talent and mistakes, confidence and failure, all in the same space. To him, this day felt routine. When his eyes landed on the boy, his expression changed. He looked once. Then again, his brow tightened slightly. The boy seemed too young, too small, too ordinary for a hall like this. The man leaned toward someone beside him and spoke in a voice meant to be private. But not careful enough. Is that the one? He asked. The other person nodded. The man let out a short laugh. Not loud, not sharp, just doubtful. A few heads nearby turned. The man straightened and crossed his arms more firmly. Then he raised his voice just enough to carry across the front rows. If he can really play, said with a smile, I'll kneel right here. Some people laughed. Others smiled without knowing why. A few felt uncomfortable but said nothing. It sounded like a joke. Light, harmless. But it was not gentle. It was the kind of comment that comes from habit. From years of thinking you have seen everything. From assuming you already know the ending before the story begins. The sound of laughter reached the boy. He heard the words. He understood them. For a brief moment, something tightened in his chest. Not anger. Not sadness. Something quieter. A familiar feeling. The feeling of being judged before being known. People often looked at him and saw only his size. He did not turn around. He did not look for the man's face. He did not look at the crowd. Instead, he took a slow breath. The adult beside him watched closely. ready to step in, ready to stop everything if needed. No one wanted the boy to feel embarrassed. No one wanted him to carry this moment as a wound. The boy gently shook. His head he wanted to play. The noise in the hall slowly faded. People settled deeper into their seats. Laughter ended. Whispers stopped. The room grew still. Someone announced that the performance would begin. The boy walked toward the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not because he was afraid, but because the room felt so large. The distance between him and the bench felt longer than it should have been. The ceiling seemed higher. The audience felt closer. He climbed onto the bench and sat down. His feet did not fully reach the floor. Few people noticed. Someone in the back leaned forward slightly. Another person folded their arms, already preparing to clap politely when it was over. The boy placed his hands on his lap. He did not rush inside his mind. He thought about the small room where he practiced, about the old piano with keys that were slightly uneven, about how music had always felt like a safe place. He remembered mistakes, wrong notes, long pauses, moments when he wanted to quit but didn't. The hall waited. The man who had made the joke stood still, watching. His smile was still there, but weaker now. He expected something short, something simple, enough to move on. The boy lifted his hands. They hovered above the keys for a single second. In that moment, the world paused. The audience. The light. Even the air seemed to hold. Still his fingers lowered. The first note filled the hall. It was soft, clear, steady, not rushed, not shaky. People did not react right away. They simply listened. A second note followed. Then another. The sound was calm, controlled, and sure. It did not demand attention. It invited it. The boy's shoulders slowly relaxed. His face changed, not into a smile, but into something deeper. Focus, calm, belonging. The whispers did not return. People leaned forward without realizing it. Breaths slowed. Thoughts drifted away. The man at the front stopped smiling. He straightened slightly. The music continued, flowing gently, like a quiet conversation meant only for those willing to listen. The boy's fingers moved with care, pressing each key as if it mattered, as if every sound had a place. Someone in the audience held their breath. Someone else felt a lump in their throat without knowing why. The piano filled the space between people, reaching places words could not. The boy did not look up. His world had narrowed to the keys. Beneath his fingers, time felt different now. Seconds stretched. Moments slipped by unnoticed. The sound echoed against the walls, warm and full. The man who had spoken earlier felt something shift inside him. He could not explain it yet. He only knew one thing. This was not what he expected. Not at all. The boy played on, and the hall, once full of doubt, now sat in silence. The boy kept playing. At first, the notes moved gently, like careful footsteps on a quiet path. Each sound landed softly, then faded, leaving space behind it. That space mattered. It gave the music room to breathe. It gave the listeners time to feel. The music did not hurry. It did not chase the next note. It seemed to know exactly where it was going, even if no one else did. Slowly, the sound began to grow, not louder, not stronger in force, but deeper. Fuller it was as if the music had found its center and decided to stay there. Each note carried weight, not because it demanded attention, but because it felt honest. Nothing was forced. Nothing was rushed. Every sound felt chosen. The hall remained silent. No one coughed. No one shifted in their seat. No chairs creaked. No phones buzzed. Even the smallest noises seemed to disappear, as if they had been gently pushed aside. It felt as if the room itself had chosen to listen. The walls, the polished floor, the high ceiling, all of it held the sound carefully, refusing to let it fall too fast. The music did not bounce around. It settled. It stayed. The boy's fingers moved with steady care. They were small, but certain. Each movement was clear. Each press of a key was thoughtful. He did not rush to the next note, and he did not pause in fear. He trusted himself, trusted the music. Most of all, he trusted the silence between the sounds. That silence mattered just as much as the notes. It gave the music space to breathe, and it gave the audience time to feel what was happening inside them. Somewhere in the audience, a woman pressed her hands together. She did not realize she was holding her breath until her chest began to ache. When she finally let the air out, it came slowly, quietly, like she did not want to disturb the moment. Her eyes stayed fixed on the boy, though she did not know why. A man a few rows back leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His back curved without him noticing. His eyes did not leave the stage. He had arrived expecting to be polite, maybe even bored. Now he felt pulled forward, as if the music had reached out and taken hold of him. Another person felt tears rise suddenly without warning. It surprised them. They had not planned to feel anything. They had come for a short performance, nothing more. Quickly they brushed the tears away, confused by their own reaction. I'm sure why this simple music had reached so deep inside. The music was not flashy. It did not jump or race or show off. It did not try to impress anyone in the room. It simply told a story. A story without words. A story about effort, about patience, about someone choosing to keep going even when no one was watching. The boy's face remained calm. His eyes stayed on the keys. Following the movement of his hands, his shoulders rose and fell gently with the rhythm, like he was breathing with the piano itself. His posture was relaxed, natural, as if this was where his body knew it belonged. He did not look nervous. He did not look proud. He looked like someone who felt at home. The man near the front row stood very still. At first he tried to understand what he was hearing. His mind searched for mistakes, for slips, for proof that this moment would fade quickly, something small he could point to and quietly dismiss. But the longer the boy played, the harder it became to hold on to doubt. The man's arms slowly uncrossed. His shoulders dropped slightly, though he did not notice. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in thought. His eyes stayed fixed on the boy, following every movement of his hands. He remembered his comment, the joke spoken to easily, the confidence behind it, the way the room had laughed along. For the first time, those words felt heavy. They sat in his chest, uncomfortable and sharp. He shifted his weight slightly, as if trying to ease the feeling. But it did not go away. The music continued. It grew more emotional now. Still not loud, still not dramatic, but full of feeling. Not sadness, not joy, something deeper than both, something human. It carried effort, long evenings in quiet rooms, repeated practice, fingers sore from trying again and again, moments of frustration where the notes refused to sound right. Moments when stopping felt easier than continuing. It sounded like patience learned slowly, like hope built over time. The boy reached a part of the piece that required care. His fingers slowed just a little, like someone stepping across a narrow bridge. The audience leaned in together, almost without realizing it. Several people felt their hearts begin to race. The room felt tense, but not afraid, hopeful. Then he crossed it. Smoothly, cleanly, no stumble, no hesitation. A soft release passed through the hall. A shared breath escaped many mouths at once. Some people smiled without meaning to. Others closed their eyes for a brief second. The boy moved into the final part of the piece. The notes softened again, circling back to where they had begun. The sound grew lighter, gentler, like the closing of a book. Whose ending you do not want to reach. Each note felt like a goodbye. The final note was played. It faded slowly. It did not disappear right. Away it lingered, hanging in the air. The boy's hands stayed on the keys. He did not move. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, heavy with feeling. No one wanted to break it too quickly. No one wanted to be the first sound after that music. Even breathing felt too loud. Then someone stood. Slowly, it was the man. He did not clap. Not yet. He took one step forward, then another. His movements were careful now, measured. Every eye in the hall followed him. The boy finally looked up. His heart skipped. He was unsure of what was happening. He was unsure if he had done something wrong. Unsure if this silence meant failure instead of success. The man stopped a short distance from the stage. He swallowed. Then, right there in front of everyone, he lowered himself. He bent down and he knelt. Not in shame, not for drama, but in respect. A soft gasp moved through the audience like a ripple in water.
Oh.
Some people covered their mouths. Others leaned forward, eyes wide. A few shook their heads slowly as if they could not believe what they were seeing. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The man stood again and turned toward the boy. His face looked different now, softer, open. His voice, when he spoke, was steady but quiet. "I was wrong," he said. That was all. Then the applause came. At first, it was gentle, like rain tapping on a roof. One pair of hands, then another, then many. The sound grew louder and stronger, filling the hall completely. It echoed off the walls. It rolled across the ceiling. It wrapped around the boy like a wave. People stood. Some clapped above their heads. Others pressed their hands together again and again. A few wiped tears from their eyes without trying to hide them. The applause went on and on, longer than anyone expected. The boy froze at first. He had not expected this. His heart beat fast. His ears rang slightly. He felt warm all over, like the room had moved closer to him. Slowly, he stood up from the bench. He looked out at the crowd, unsure where to look. So many faces, so many expressions. His cheeks warmed. He gave a small, awkward bow. Then another, unsure if the first was enough. The adult who had stood beside him earlier stepped closer now, placing a gentle hand on his back. The touch grounded him, reminded him where he was. The boy felt steadier. The applause finally softened. People began to sit again, still smiling, still whispering, but differently now. Not with doubt, with wonder. With respect, the man walked closer to the piano once more. "This room," he said, looking around, "has heard many performances. Today, it heard something rare." He turned back to the boy. "Thank you," he said. The boy nodded. He did not know what to say. The words felt too small for what had just happened. So he said nothing. As the crowd slowly began to leave, people paused near the stage. Some smiled at the boy. Others nodded quietly. A few placed a hand over their heart and walked away without speaking. The hall felt different. Now, warmer, lighter. The boy stepped away from the piano and stood quietly once more, just like before. But something inside him had changed. Not because people had praised him, not because someone had knelt, but because he had done what he came to do. He had played. Outside, the sunlight was still bright. Cars passed. Voices echoed down the street. Life moved on as it always did, but for those who had been inside that hall, something stayed behind. A reminder that talent does not always arrive loudly, that doubt can be easy and humility can be hard, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest voice if only someone is willing to listen.